is making its world premiere at South by Southwest. Can you tell us a little bit about the film and your character in it?
Yeah, so the film is about a character named Cooper, who is a musician and a screenwriter. And we sort of meet Cooper as he's been recently diagnosed with this really rare form of OCD called pure O, and all the difficult shenanigans that sort of like ensue as he sort of juggle his personal life and his marriage and his job. Yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but that's kind of where we start at a 10, you know?
Yeah, great synopsis. How did this script find you, and what was it about Dylan's story and this character that attracted you to this project?
It's funny because Dylan and we went to the same college together, and so we knew each other socially. And he called me out of the blue one day and was like, "Hey man, I know we don't know each other so well, but I wrote the script. It's kind of about my life in a way. And I think you're the guy that is going to play the part." And I was like, up until this point, nobody was calling me, making me offers. So I read the script and I was so moved by the screenplay and the story. And I had no idea that this was even a thing. So I had no choice but to say yes to it. That's kind of how it came about. So it was very serendipitous. It was very sort of organic and sort of how it was meant to be, I think.
This is such a deeply personal story to him. Did that bring a different weight / pressure to this project?
That's a good question. I think initially I put myself under a lot of pressure and I was like, oh man, I want to do this justice. I want to honor his experience. He had the courage to write this. And so I sort of put that on myself. But he was so gracious in that he made it clear from the get-go that he's like, this is you now, you're playing Cooper. I'm here as a resource, any questions, but make it your own. And it was just a great sort of partnership that we had then, because he was on set, this amazing sort of litmus test for me being able to check in, be like, is it working? Are we getting it? How is it reading on camera? So it was a really lovely sort of relationship that we sort of developed over the weeks that we shot.
Like you were saying earlier, OCD is often misrepresented in film and television. What was that process like for you as you got ready to step into Cooper's shoes? What was that research that you did?
Oh man, it was so extensive. I mean, I read a lot about OCD. I read a lot about pure O. There's a book that Dylan gave me that he was reading at the time. I think it's called How to Live with Someone That Has OCD. So it's for the people that are sort of in a relationship with somebody or know somebody, how to be of service and support and not to sort of trigger things. And then I found a huge sort of network of information online. There's all kinds of support groups, Reddit groups, YouTube videos, people sort of being really brave and talking about their experience, because it is still sort of misunderstood and misdiagnosed. Yeah. So that was a really fascinating dive into that and to understand the mechanisms and what's happening in somebody's brain when they're triggered by it. And of course, Dylan was, the first one to sort of explain to me as we were doing scene work, breaking down the script, looking at things like, oh, this is Cooper is in this scene, he's really compulsing. And how that sort of is manifesting itself. And then the other thing I did once I sort of was able to digest all of that really intense research, I was able to work in a rehab facility with a colleague of ours who does improv with people in recovery. So that sort of work really grounded me as Cooper, because that's his job in the film, his work in the rehab facility. So it's easy for me to get very heady and into the research. And at some point I had to be like, okay, I've done as much as I can. And now let's see, what are the things that ground Cooper? What's going to ground me in this experience? So that was a fascinating thing, to be able to be sort of privy to the world of recovery and meeting people and having these very moving and amazing interactions. It gave me a certain feeling as I was preparing that sort of took over any research and intellectual work. I was sort of really in this world of this is real life, people trying to get better, and how brave and how amazing. And so it was a lot of stuff like that that really sort of fed me early on. Yeah.
Great answer. From an actor's point of view, is experience different when the person who created this universe is also at the helm directing? What was it like collaborating with Dylan?
It was really great collaborating with him. I mean, he was so adamant from the get-go that he wanted this to have a documentary sort of feeling to it, that
Yeah.
it was really sort of engineering situations where there was very little rehearsal. So he sort of really, he put me in these different situations and I just had to sort of like, jump off, the deep end and be like, well, here I am. I'm going to just have to learn as I go. So there was a certain volatility that was there. That was great. It didn't feel ever that we were really shooting a movie at some point. It really all became a documentary that we were making in a strange sort of meta way. And so I really appreciated that. And he was very, very, very generous with not micromanaging anything. He was like, let's find this on the day. There's a lot of difficult scenes that we had to do. And he was just a wonderful resource, really an actor's director, because he's an actor as well. So
Yeah.
he had a similar language. If he sort of gave me a glance like, hey, Danny, I'll just do a little more like, I would know what he means. And so it was streamlined. It was very seamless. So there was no miscommunications. There was nothing vague about how we were working. Yeah.
And he was also very intentional with the way that he cast this project. How did working alongside people who suffer from OCD and mental health professionals help elevate your performance and bring that authenticity to the project?
I mean, again, I think just to your previous question, I think that sort of authenticity that, a lot of people that were cast in the support group sequences and stuff and work at the rehab facility are people from his own life. When Dylan was going through this in his own life, he pulled all these people together and was like, hey, do you want to be in this movie with me? This is, I'm telling my story. And it just immediately brought this realness to it. It's a different thing for me as an actor, all of a sudden dealing with people who aren't actors. It's such a joy because they don't know the tricks. They don't have the self-consciousness about it. They're not acting in that sense. They're just being themselves. And it immediately, would take me out of my own stuff and just be present in the moment. And it was just such a cool thing to also speak to people that, have gotten help, have OCD, are sober, what have you. It was art mirroring life, and everything was sort of like feeding on itself in this really amazing way. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Cooper also emerges as kind of a mentor to the other characters within the film. Who were the people in your own life who shaped the storyteller that you are today?
Oh man. I think it starts with, it starts with my parents. My dad is an actor and my mom is an opera singer. So I kind of got screwed from the get-go and was very, very blessed to have, people in my corner from the get-go that really supported me with all the doubts. And it's just supporting, my artistic sort of life, whether it was my mom taking me to the symphony as a kid, even though I hated it, and my dad taking me to movies and plays. It started from an early age, and then it graduated towards me finding the drama department in high school and having great mentors there, and then college and acting school. It's just a huge community, and all of my colleagues and friends that are actors, I learned from them so much, and that it's I'm very lucky to have so many wonderful people around me, and have had for such a long time, that sort of inspire me and keep me going when the industry and all the stuff around it gets you down. It's difficult to keep your head above water sometimes. So it's the work of other people and my family that always gives me that wind in the sails that I need. Yeah.
And community is such a huge theme within this film as well. There's so many vulnerable moments with your character and the experiences that he's going throughout the film, and you handle that with so much nuance. As an actor, how did you create the space for yourself to dive into those moments in particular?
That's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, I think giving myself over to the scene and the other people that I'm playing with, at the end of the day, that's it. I had the best people around me. to just sort of be present and to listen and to, you know, trust that the work that I did to ground this person and to try to bring as much humanity and care and you know, pain to it as I possibly could. I took it off of the people that I was with and tried just to let it live, you know. I mean, it was uncomfortable and difficult to, you know, for 4 weeks essentially to be walking around as this open wound of a person who has no idea who he is anymore because of the stigma of this illness and, you know, mental health issues in general. So I had to take my own ego and my own judgments about that and leave them at the door and just show up and just be like, you know, here I am. And that's a tough thing to do. And I hope I was able to do it justice, you know. I love playing it. So I'm excited to share it with people and hope it resonates.
Yeah, you absolutely do. You deliver such a standout performance in this film. And when it makes its premiere at South by Southwest later this month, is there a scene in particular that you're really excited for audiences to see?
Oh man. You know what? I haven't seen the movie yet, so I don't know.
Oh.
But there's I don't know if you know, but my partner Hope is,
Yeah.
you know, my it plays Emily in the movie. So it's kind of a trip just to have that be broadcast in a way, you know, have us go through that journey together. So I'm excited for people to see that dynamic. But there is a scene at towards the end of the movie. It's kind of a cathartic sort of big moment between my character and one of the patients in the rehab facility, Brandon. Yeah. And it was the first scene that I read as I was reading the script. And I love that scene, that monologue that Cooper gives to Brandon as he's sort of realizing, you know, what it's going to take for him to heal, that it is, you know, the vulnerability and being there with other people and being like, hey man, I'm not okay and you're not okay. And let's just sort of like, you know, hold space for one another. I love that scene. So I'm selfishly excited to see that scene and just to have people see the whole thing in general. I can't be more specific. I'd like to be, but I'm just excited for people to see it in general, you know?
Yeah, the film's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, you've also worked on projects of all sizes. What is it about independent filmmaking that excites you as a creative and storyteller?
It reminds me of doing theater, you know? It reminds me of being in the drama club in my high school. It's sort of the indie spirit, the kind of all hands on deck, improvisational aspect of it. You know, there's no fanciness, there's no nothing to hang on to. It's just about the work and just getting the shot and just hopefully telling a good story. And so that sort of camaraderie and that kind of guerrilla style of making something for just the love of it, you know, with your friends. It's just such a thrill. It's such a thrill. It's always a good reminder of why I'm doing what I'm doing, you know, and not sort of like head in the clouds, getting lost in all that stuff. It's like, no, this is it. It's about these stories and simple stories about people. Yeah, so it reminds me of that, of being in high school and being in college and you know, doing plays, because we're all just a bunch of, you know, theater nerds.
Great answer.
Yeah.
I got one final question for you, and touched upon this already a little bit earlier, but you know, this isn't just a film about OCD. There's so many universal themes that this film tackles. Was there one in particular that hit home for you?
I mean, I'm always struck by this, you know, this courage and vulnerability, that's what real strength is. And I think in a time when everybody is so reactive and, you know, and everybody's so tense and sort of the notion that it's okay not to be okay and it's okay to, you know, you don't have to white knuckle it as Cooper does. It was sort of something that really moved me, is that he's this, and I can relate to this person who's like, I'm good, I got it all together, don't worry about me. But on the inside, he's not okay. And he hasn't given himself permission to even say that because of, who knows, his upbringing and society and toxic masculinity, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that's really something that always gets me, is that, like, it's okay not to be okay, you know, just let people see you, let people in.
Yeah.
You know, it's how we're gonna, at the end of the day, be better people and better citizens, and move in a direction of empathy and care, and not just blunt force trauma.